Ladies and gentlemen, kids of all ages, it is Wednesday. It is time, past time, on time, for another episode of the Mattriarchy. I am your host, Matt Rhys, coming to you from beautiful, if windy, Scottsbluff, Nebraska, where we had just a really nice day before the rain and after the rain. So, took my bike out, riding to and from the office today, and it was only a little bit harder to ride home than it was to ride in. So that's my news for today. But we have gathered our stalwart Superman readers to catch back up with our series, sort of, kind of, a little bit. I know there have been much goings on in the Superman universe since we last picked up on issue 12, I think it was we read. But Twitless had said there's things we need to know before we read the House of Brainiac. Is that the big crossover event that we're supposed to do next?
Yeah, and that's the crossover between Action Comics and Superman, which in theory should be very much on the same page. We can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So Twitless said, I said, so are we digging into that this week? And Twitless said, wait, before we do that, either you all have to read all of Action Comics, or I need to come here and explain what we're getting into.
just a smidge. Just a little bit of background on something.
And so I said, okay, that sounds like a thing. Are there specific things we need to read to catch up? And he said, maybe you should go back and read the Superman annual.
I feel like Hutch needed to read the annual because every time he asked a question, I feel like I was saying,
questions were the annual.
So
why is Livewire of a column? Why is Parasite? Yeah.
Yep.
So we did that, went back, and that's where we're going to start with, is going over the stories from the annual, and then Twitless is going to give us a little presentation.
I don't know if it's a presentation. I'm just going to walk you through it a little bit.
Wait a second, guys. I just realized something that I forgot to do. I forgot to share the link on anything.
That's okay.
Who wants to fill in while I do that quick?
I'll yak.
Who can gab?
Your stream tonight.
One thing I wanted to say first off is an interesting just bit of trivia, which is the fact that this annual, I think, is also a good discussion point. And I will share screen here just for a second. But guess what this issue was nominated for?
What?
So Superman Annual 2023 was highlighting right here, nominated for an Eisner for Best Single Issue One Shot. So the issue that we just read is on the nominations for this year's Eisners. So not only is this a Superman story, we also get to talk about this in terms of, this issue being nominated for one of comics' most annual prestigious awards. Whether or not the Eisners have gone downhill or not, it's a separate conversation, but it is unnominated. So that's an interesting, like I said, bit of trivia. So yeah. I don't know personally, and I think we should save this for when we end up talking about the annual. But I have some thoughts about whether or not this deserves to win said award.
Can you explain to those who need it just what the Eisners are?
Sure. So, which by the way is Cartoonicus' way of saying, "Can you please explain to me what the Eisners are?"
Well, yeah.
I thought that's what I just said.
So it's basically what many people shorthand will say is the Oscar awards for comics. And I believe they do them during San Diego Comic-Con. I think it's kind of lumped in that. So it's America's largest convention also happens to tie in with this large industry award. And if just with just a general scroll through, you can see it does cover many categories. We've got, best short story, best single issue one shot, best continuing series, best limited series, best new series, best publication for early readers, best publication for kids, teens. We have different age groups, best humor, best anthology, reality-based work, best graphic memoir, best albums, adaptations, best U.S. edition of international material. These are United States based awards. But another thing that's interesting is the in addition to, for example, getting into best writers or artists, and creators, there's also a place for academic work, best lettering. So there's often an award for best. Hold on, let me find it. Like the best academic piece. Where is?
Do they have best YouTube video about comics?
Not yet.
They should.
But we do have.
We'd be a chew-in.
Yeah, we have best academic scholarly work. I even know someone personally on this list for the best academic work. There is best piece of journalism, essentially, periodical or journalism. If there was podcast, that's probably where it would technically go. A podcast could be I don't see podcast on this list, but I'm assuming podcast could be something you could be proposed maybe in future years. It would make sense. There's not
I think our thing on the whole comic eras of Golden Age, Silver Age, and Bronze Age and all that should be like under the academic pieces.
There you go. Yeah.
If we had turned it into a book, I think we definitely could have an argument for that.
And
we'd have to cite more sources than, well, I've been reading comics forever.
Yeah. Mention for Cartoonicus' sake, since he doesn't know, that this is named after Will Eisner, who wrote comics and sequential art and was a genius an inventive genius when it came to comic books.
So there are a lot of
people. He also invented Black Hawk and the Blackhawks and the Spirit and Midnight and a bunch of the quality characters. I can't think of all of them right now.
Yeah.
So taking that into account, there are a lot of people, I'm sure you would recognize that, would say that the Oscars or the Grammys are kind of just pointless, political shows.
No, you're right. Yeah.
How do you feel about, like, if you were to compare that to the Eisner, do you think that the Eisners are worth it? Or what do you think, if anything, makes them prestigious?
So the thing is, right, is that I think people would judge the Oscars, right, because of what has happened to them. There have clearly been years where, especially in years past, right, where films have earned Oscars, and I would say even today, there are films that earn Oscars that deserve them. There are films that are very significant, and it's like, well, no, that film deserves recognition. For example, as this just this past year, Godzilla -1 was nominated. And it did win. It won an Oscar in a very interesting category, but that film deserved to get critical attention. And so when it comes to judging an award show, I think it's a nuanced discussion. I think it's something where, yes, you are correct. I think there is a lot of political and ideological nonsense that do detract from the credibility of the awards, especially when works get nominated. And we're not just talking about the Oscars, right? For example, the Hugo Awards for science fiction for the past several years have gotten dragged through the mud because of how they conducted their voting. Just last year, I think it was the Hugos were held in China, and the Chinese censorship boards had a lot of undue influence. There was a huge scandal about just that alone. So
we had an entire show about the Hugos like 2 years ago on this channel.
Really?
Yeah, you were there.
Was I? Was I there?
I think you were there at least for part of the night.
What I'm saying is that
maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know if I was there. I don't know if I was there for that one.
But I could be wrong.
The point is that when it comes to that question, I think yes, I think that the Eisners have been compromised, and I think they have lost a chunk of credibility when you see certain works getting pushed to the fore. However, there are still significant creators who are getting some well-deserved recognition. So I think it ends up being a bit of a mixed bag, like many of those awards that we've seen lately.
And I have to just before we actually get into the nitty-gritty of the annual. I just wanted to say that, the problem with the best single issue nomination for the annual is that there's so little stuff that is done in one anymore, that what single issue can be this good issue. That is actually a smaller category, whereas in the past you would have like Who is Donna Troy, a great little 22-page story that was just beautiful, and now it's like, what can you really nominate that's done in a single issue? And so an annual, and that gives you 37, 38 pages to do, is probably more likely to be up for this, whereas everybody's aiming for the trade with single issues. So I think that this annual was good, but as it isn't a cohesive story, it's more like every 2 pages is, here's a subplot that we're stringing along, and here's a subplot we're stringing along, and here's a subplot we're starting, and here's a subplot that will pay off later. And it's weird to hold that up as one of the best. But anyway, we'll get into that as we do the issue.
Okay, I gotta ask a question there, Twitless.
Oh.
We're sharing your screen, and like, okay,
What?
Is there a sunrise that I'm seeing?
The light at the bottom. Yeah, what is that?
Hold on.
You're muted.
So that is just part of the graphic design of the page.
Oh, okay.
Because it seems like it's moving.
It's part of
Probably
the web
just
page.
an optical illusion when you move the text.
It's not me. It's literally
I'm
just,
sure that it was in the very middle earlier.
Yeah, it's moving. It is moving.
I guess.
What the heck?
I don't know. Modern web design.
I wouldn't say it's good.
I'm quite confused about it.
Yeah.
I thought we were gonna ask a question about the Eisners. I was like, oh, cool. And then it was like, no, why is the web page so funky?
I do have a question about the Eisners. I'm not sure if I want to go off on a huge tangent because I was looking at some of the academic work things, and I was questioning the takes on some of those titles. I'm like,
Yeah. But this lava lamp background is really weird.
Well,
it's tripping us out, man. This isn't that kind of show, San Diego.
The interesting thing about the academic stuff is like, this is what, because I actually recognize, obviously I recognize 2 of the names. I recognize a couple of definitely one of the presses. University Press of Mississippi is a hotbed for comic book scholarship. And like, for example, Kiana Whitted is a very, very common name to see. She does quite a bit. But
can you hit Control++ and make the text a little larger so we could all see it?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I should have thought of it sooner.
Where I live now, Dr. Whitted is actually in a she works at a university that's actually very near me. I emailed her once. But anyway, so
I would like to point out that If Sherazade Drew is an amazing title. That's a great title.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I don't know if the paper or the book is any good. I have no comment on that. I'm not familiar with George Courrejade in the slightest. But like, as far as titles go, that's just the beautiful title.
That's a good point. That's definitely a good point.
That's great. That's that. Yeah. Anyway.
All right. So back to the annual and so on.
Yes.
So there's our best single issue one shot.
Well, and the only one issue here I'm noticing that's out of a regular book is Nightwing 105. The rest of them are all like one shots or annuals or something like that. It's like, that's great. That's wild.
Nightwing shows up twice because it's on best continuing series. Mm-hmm. So, though you Tom Taylor lovers, he got he's on there at least twice. Whoop-de-doo. And then there's our Tom King nomination for Wonder Woman. I might need to actually do a little bit of a dive into Tom King's Wonder Woman, because I had a theory that if he was going to do just close to justice to a superhero character, it would be Wonder Woman, or something in the vein of what it was, the spirit of which it was intended. Because Marston was a weirdo, so.
Yeah, no, I definitely can see that Tom King might be the kind of guy that enjoy being tied up.
Yeah, there we go. It's like that's because he was in the CIA, right?
Yeah, of course. Enhanced interrogation. They all have to go through it before you can waterboard somebody. You have to be waterboarded.
Right.
That's the rule.
That's when he discovered he actually liked it. Actually, this is really kinky. I think I'll do Wonder Woman next. Anyway, let's I guess talk about the annual, because it's an Eisner nominated book.
We got to pull ourselves out of it some one way or the other. Okay,
Yeah, we're 15 minutes into this and we haven't talked about it yet. Just the fact that it was
That's fine.
nominated.
Well,
So,
in fairness, part of that is because I screwed up before the stream started and we had to fill time. I think
That's
we've
fine.
done our due diligence in filling time.
Yep.
Let's change gears off of the Eisners and talk about Superman annual number 1, the new annual number 1. So this is from the volume 6, which I have such mixed feelings about that whole business. I know you can't go. Well, I can't. I know you can't go back and like undo it, right? But like when they decided, oh no, we're gonna start Superman over at 1, it's just like, and they've done that like I don't know. That's crazy. You're never gonna keep making Superman. Why would you?
Yeah, and then they went back to the original numbering on Flash and Action and all those. Yeah.
Yep. And Superman like had been, and then like actually like double number them on the covers. I don't know if you guys have noticed that. It's double numbered. So
yeah.
It's always
I have
the actual number and then the historical number.
Yeah.
I have a very. I don't even know if I'm right about this, but I do have a different opinion regarding that approach. I think with a little bit of the way I think about it, the way I envision it, if you're going to have a story that has one continuity, you shouldn't change the numbering. I do concede that. But if you're going to do reboots, and both Marvel and DC have often done reboots, I see no reason not to treat those as separate entities, like a television. There are several different animated Spider-Man shows. Each one of them has an episode 1, and they're treated as a separate entity. Mm-hmm. And I don't see why you couldn't do that in comics, because a lot of people will talk about their cartoon show and be like, this was my Spider-Man. And I see no reason why you couldn't have that approach in the comics as well, if it works so well for example, the animated series. I feel like they try to adopt some of that, but they don't commit to it, and it ends up with just a mess. Either way, so
my problem is with your big characters. Like Superman is included in this for sure. It's like they're not really starting over, right? They'll say, "Oh, we're starting over," and then inevitably, I mean, like, except after the Crisis, every other iteration keeps like seeping stuff in from before, a few elements here, a few elements there, and pretty soon you're just like, "Oh, Lex is in a giant purple mech costume and he's punching Superman in the mouth. Didn't see that one coming."
Yeah. And we've talked many times about that, about how I have trouble with Lex Luthor's history, because I remember reading it was like, because I didn't start with John Byrne, but when John Byrne restarted everything, I threw myself into that and I read all the stuff that they put out. I read the biography of Lex Luthor, where he says he killed his parents and all that sort of stuff. And then it's like, and then his parents show up and his sister's alive, and it's like, ugh. And then he's younger. He's not a contemporary of Perry White, but then some of that stuff is still in continuity, and I'm lost. So anyway, but we've gone over that like every time we bring up one of these issues of the Superman run. So I don't want to repeat myself all the time.
And this issue will have, by the way, the medal's got the hilarious best take ever. Started over at -1. Each issue will take place prior to the last. That would be a great experiment.
That would.
So the last page of every issue is the first page of the issue before it.
Right.
Just for infinite regression.
I think you should do 3.14, and then you add a digit each issue until people are learning pi as you put out your comic.
Oh, I thought you were suggesting we do patch notes at the
No,
end
it's
of
like
the issue, and then it's like we
3.1415926535, and then you just keep adding, and people are like, learning the digits of pi as you put out your comic.
My favorite Superman is pi to the 6th digit.
There you go.
There you go.
Oh.
Okay, so
okay.
am I super picky that the thing I keep coming back to when I read this issue is that if you're in the back seat of a cop car, you can't roll the window down and you can't open the door and get out. And
well, you're getting ahead, but
I
no.
know, but that's the thing that bugs me about this issue, and it's at the last page. And I'm gonna have to wait for you guys to talk about everything else before we get.
Can I talk? I want to give a broad stroke here. I love this opening. I really do. And this is the thing that kind of bummed me a bit about this annual. I like what this annual does. I don't like that it's not really about Superman.
Yeah.
But this spread was like, oh, I'll read an issue about this. This is cool. Superman's fighting giant toy man. I'm sold. And then it was like, oh, that's just happening in the background. Let's do a bunch of character drama. And I'm like, I'm fine with the character drama. That's cool. But don't show me this awesome fight and then not pay off as much as you could have. That was a big gripe for me.
I'm with you 100%, but I want to reflect on something that we saw a couple weeks ago, right? Mm-hmm. So in this, it's very much a slice of life story, and I don't dislike slice of life stories. Sure. And I think it's very appropriate because like the story focuses on Superman's supporting cast at the newspaper, and it goes in to fill some of the gaps in using those day in the life kind of things. And DC has a long history of the private lives stories, what happens to Clark on his day off kind of stuff. I don't mind that in the slightest. But when you open with this thing and then you flash over, because the setup for the story, guys, is that Superman's having a battle. Meanwhile, at the Daily Planet, Lois is trying to get her reporters to write interesting stories, and so he's sending everybody mismatched to other people's beats, and which was a very interesting idea. But we only got half of the content out of this. Only half of the characters get touched on afterwards, and I felt a little bit cheated because I really wanted to see more of what Ron Thorpe had to do on the day. Right?
Run troop.
Yeah. Troop.
Yeah.
There you go. But anyway,
I didn't know Steve Lombard had used his nepotism to bring his sister on board. I was wondering who that was. I thought maybe he'd gotten married or something, but no, that's his sister. And it's like, there's never been anything about her in any of the run up to, what is it? This is six issues in, and then they did this. So there was never any mention of her. So,
and I was surprised Lombard still had existed in this continuity, but that's fine.
Yeah.
So anyway, the point is like that's the setup. So they go out to explore these different stories, and it's kind of a thing. Okay, fine. Now the deal though is that in the background of the scene and in several scenes, people are looking out across these giant floor-to-ceiling windows at the Daily Planet building, and they're seeing Superman fighting these giant robots.
And as usual, I do want to point out, just even in passing, that we have Joshua Williamson as the single writer for the work, which is nice, which does mean the whole story is cohesive to a point. But my gosh, and I know I've rung this bell almost as much as Hutch has rung his bell, but there's just something about, I want to see a better continuity of artists. It's just every 3 or 4 pages when you get different artists, it would be very distracting if this happened in film. If you had a different actor and a different actress portraying the role every 10 seconds and it flipped around 6 times a show, you'd go, what's going on with the production value of what I'm watching? Mm-hmm. And and it's weird. It really is weird. Why can't we get 1 or maybe just 2 artists to do a comic nowadays? Why does it have to be 4 per issue?
For my sake, I didn't find it terribly distracting, but I think part of that might be mitigated if DC was leaning into a house style, especially for these big for these big project things. Make it look like the house style. I think that's harder to do maybe with modern computer coloring.
Well, it's also
I
has
don't
to do with
know.
how they're doing labor, right? Because it used to be comics was more insular, so you basically had a stable of artists that mostly lived in a particular geographic location. A lot of them were just upstate New York people, or they were metropolitan New Yorkers, by largely, and then but from there it was like Americans in general. Nowadays with the digital era, it's just a lot of these people, it's international, so it's harder to preserve the house style when you have 3 people from the Philippines, 2 from South America, and 1 guy from LA.
Yeah, that's also a fair point. That's also a fair point. But anyway, so the thing is,
I'm sorry, before we go off, the thing about the artists is none of them, I don't know, are any of them famous? It's not that it's like this is the annual and you're not picking out. If you are picking out great artists, I don't mean any offense to anybody. I just don't recognize names.
Mahmoud Azrar is pretty well known.
I mean, are comic book artists famous anymore?
Yeah, they are.
I don't know, but I mean,
there's a few of them.
It's not like JLA 200 when it's like chapter 1 is by, Brian Boland, and chapter 2 is by George Perez, and chapter 3, and it would say that, here, this is the artist for this section, and it's because this person is well known and associated with this character. It's like this shifts back and forth. I didn't really notice the shift. I'm not like you in picking out, this artist and that artist and saying, but then again, I was also in a rush to read it. So, yeah, but I didn't really notice the difference here and there. I hate what they did to Jimmy Olsen's hair. Hopefully it's just the artist on this
the
page.
picture thing with him is not working.
The what thing?
We've seen it in the others. They're trying to make him look like this hipster with the skinny jeans and the half-shaved head and everything. And it makes him look like the most arrogant person I've ever seen.
I think may as well pierce his nose.
I don't know.
I think it's because we've seen, because this is again when he was dating Banshee, he looked more normal. I think this is more of this again that goes back to the artist style where a character can look a couple of shades different than what we're used to seeing because the shift in artist happens.
But they were doing that back then too.
Yeah. So anyway, the thing I wanted to focus on some of these scenes, with the thing I was trying to comment on, was that you have this great action that's happening in the background, but it's happening at a distance. Now, on the one hand, that kind of makes sense, but on the other hand, it seems weird to me in this moment because it was just a couple weeks ago that the promo still for the new Superman movie, the James Gunn Superman movie came out, and you've got Death Laser from hell blowing the hole in Metropolis, and Superman's putting his boots on in the foreground,
right?
And while it's a what do you call it?
That's what they chose to put behind him, right? Because they initially snapped a picture just of him as he was getting dressed, and they thought, that's a nice picture. And then they chose to put an attack going on behind him, which everybody immediately goes, why isn't he doing something?
He's Superman. He should be way faster than this, right?
Don't forget, mind you, not guaranteed, but don't forget Hollywood's penchant for purposefully putting in fake scenes just to throw you off.
So the story behind
I'm sure that's it.
The story behind that, what Hutch is alluding to, is the fact that the photo was not on set. It was an incidental photo that Gunn liked because it looked so normal, and he was trying to. The intent was to be like, oh, here's a guy just putting on his boots, and that's what the actor was just doing. And they wanted to channel that sort of normal, almost Norman Rockwell-ish idea. And then after snapping that shot, paired it with what Hutch also said, with the CGI apocalypse in the background, which probably where the mistake was made. Because if you're going for that sort of like everyman, we got this shot incidentally, not even while trying to film it, you probably wanted to pair that with a background material that matched what you shot it with, which probably would have worked better.
But see, my point is, and I like the idea of Superman just putting his boots on one boot at a time. But if there's an active alien attack, that's happening at super speed, right?
Yeah.
So we still have this, flying out the window with aspect to it all, that action in motion concept of it all.
The
And
problem is that Superman does not have a Superman signal, whereas if you'd seen the skylight and Batman's bat signal was that, and Batman's putting on his boots, you'd go, that's about the pace that he'd go for, he's got to go talk to Gordon.
Yeah.
But,
I believe you on that. So, but anyway, the thing is with that still, it separates the hero from the heroic, right? And so part of what I'm seeing with this one here is because it's the Superman annual and it's not a Superman story, it's about these other elements that it seems to separate the Superman from the hero from the heroic a little bit. And the thing is Fly Fox has talked about how he doesn't care for this idea because this doesn't seem like a Superman story, and I agree. But I also don't necessarily think it's out of place as a whole, because it's the annual, not part of the regular series.
Right. Yeah.
So if on the weekly we weren't getting if on the monthly we weren't getting superhero action, and it was all like the what's going on at the Daily Planet more than what's going on with Superman, I'd have a huge problem with it. But because this is set within that context and it steps away from it, I find it definitely more forgivable. Especially because I enjoy these little vignettes. They're fleshing out Williamson's world well.
Yeah.
And for a lot of stuff. Now, then the next question though becomes: is it skippable? Right. That's the other question about it. If this isn't your story, is the story skippable within the greater context of Williamson's Superman? And we don't necessarily have to answer that question now, but I want that to hang in the air a little bit. Because I think as we go through it, we need to discuss that.
Yeah, the big problem I have with the Mark's Big Boy toy man attacking Superman in the background is I get the idea that you're trying to go for that these are the blasé New Yorkers who don't care about the skyscrapers around them, but it's like that, and the Metropolis people have that about Superman battles. It's like, oh, another Superman battle's happening, but I mean. This thing is knocking over is stumbling into skyscrapers in the background. People are being injured, and they're like, Clark's on that. He's covering that story, so we're not going to pay attention to it. And she's, Ron, you're covering the mayoral race, and meanwhile, behind them, a giant robot is running.
I hate it.
It's not even worth watching.
I hate that conceit. It's not. Yeah. Williamson's not the first one to do this, so I'm not going to lay the blame at his feet. I personally hate the conceit of, oh well, there's basically a Godzilla fight going on in the background, but it's just a Monday, right? Superman's gonna take care of it. And I'm like, you really deflate a lot of the narrative weight that your world has when you can have kaiju fights and that's just a regular Tuesday. Even if it happens a lot, you need to treat it with some level of seriousness, or else, like I said, they just kind of reduces the narrative weight of everything. So I personally hate that. It's a trope. It is a trope. I personally hate that trope.
And the one thing about that trope is we'll get to that a little bit, because they subvert that slightly in this next scene. So let's set up this scene and talk about it a little bit. Jimmy has been spent on a special assignment to go with Lisa, the tech reporter, to go interview what's her name, Mercy Graves, at the at LexCorp, Supercorp, and they go through all this stuff, and it's this is actually a pretty fun little vignette.
And it answered a question that I had about is she a robot? Is this known? And this answered that perfectly. It says, hey, this is off the record, as she manifests big robot arms. So yeah,
it doesn't explain how she's Asian and not blonde, but at least we know one thing about her.
She is Asian?
I think she's supposed to be Asian, yeah.
I didn't know that.
If you're the way they want.
She was Asian in the Batman series, and I guess they liked that version.
Oh, okay.
In the Batman?
The cartoon.
The Batman.
Yeah.
But Anyway, so she hands Lisa. I can't remember dude's name. Doesn't matter. Lisa and Jimmy stuff because they were going to try to sell merch, and Superman says, "Don't sell merch. Selling merch is bad." I don't understand why Superman would say that. Williamson, what the hell, man? You think Superman lives in a world where there's not just like a million like
let me defend it for a second.
Out there selling Superman gear on the sidewalk?
I think the idea is that if Superman is making money off of something that he's in charge of, and he's basically making cash off of his specifically his name, I'm okay with Clark not being okay with that.
Right, but he's not. The company is that puts it back into research and development.
I get it.
Make the world a better place. That's how it works. Hey, by the way, out there in internet land, if you want to support the show, you can support the Ideal Comics on Patreon, and that can help us make more comics and more content for you all. Okay, so or you can buy our books. They're available on some place. You go to idealcomics.net. There's a thing that says buy. We've got an e-shop. You can go check it out.
So I will say one thing just specifically about the art. I like pages like this.
I really like this double page. This is fun.
This is bring back the cutaways. Walking our way through the building. This accomplishes a lot. We're doing storytelling, but we're also showing you kind of a little bit of what Supercore looks like through this kind of slice diagram cutaway. And
I can't remember the dude's name. There's an indie comic guy who does like this style. And I can't remember what he did.
Is that Clark's rocket? Is that the rocket he came to Earth in? He now has that at a Lex Luthor building.
It's supposed to be Clark's rocket.
I think it's a replica because remember in the series, Lex had created a replica of like Jor-El essentially. To entice Superman. Hey, I'm doing this for you. So I think that's an attempt to and the way he has everyone dressed.
His rocket design so many times that I don't know what's in continuity anymore.
He also has the scientists dress a little like Kryptonian in like the Kryptonian science class. So like they're aping the Kryptonian style. I think that's kind of the.
Wasn't that like I forget? Was it the Rebirth or was it the New 52 that actually had it? That as soon as Clark lands, they grab his rocket. Like the government has his rocket, but they don't have the baby that was in it, and it immediately goes to Luthor to be analyzed or something. And I don't know what's in continuity anymore, but yeah. So they've changed it so many times.
Who I was trying to think of.
Where? Yeah. No kidding. I can't believe I didn't think of that. Yeah.
I'm sorry. What was the name again? I talked
Chris Ware.
Chris Ware.
He did comics guy that does a lot of this kind of structuralist.
Jimmy Corrigan, smartest boy on
Earth. Yeah. That's great. I need to finish reading that. But that's pretty impressive.
It's impressively depressing.
Well, yes.
It's the most depressing thing you'll ever. Not that one. That one's too much. That one is like
that's a red flag if I've ever heard one.
It is like the most depressing thing that has ever been like created. It's awful.
That's hardly true.
Actually, I don't know. I think you can make a case for it. Like
we'll discuss Chris Ware some other time. This just stuff this page layout reminded me.
Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah, that's a little bit like that.
See, we get Superman fighting the robot in the background, but it's not an action shot or anything. Yeah. I just wish that in between each segment we would get one segment of the fight that's going on.
That's a great idea right there. That's you want to be an editor.
I do actually want to see how this plays out, and how does the robot last more than 30 seconds against Superman?
Can I tell you I think I figured out what's wrong with comics.
Go ahead.
Okay, back in the day, here's my crazy theory. All right, this prompts. I think this plays.
Wait, it's not 9/11.
It's completely. This is, by the way, a very, very offensive theory. Okay. So my theory is that back in the day, the best comics were written and drawn by relatively normative people, and they were edited by the autistic neurodivergents. And we have now swapped that. They are now written by the autistic neurodivergents, and they are edited by the normies. So what you had before is when you had the autistic neurodivergents, they'd go, no, Superman would never say that. And here's the 5 issues that I can remember off the top of my head that explain why. Go back and rewrite that. And I don't care how you feel. And that's just how the editing went. And so nowadays,
that's E. Nelson Bridwell. That's exactly what he'd do. Yeah.
So nowadays,
wrote a bunch too, though. But yeah.
Nowadays, the pathway to get into comics at all is like being like an editor. But you have all these normally people who just want to affirm you, and it's like, oh well, since you wrote it that way, I guess I'm just gonna try to good for you, affirm it. And all the people writing them are the neurodivergents who are making weird stuff, and they need to be held to account. So I think we could just swap those two. We'd get closer to the way things should be in perfect balance. That's
maybe
perfectly aside crazy theory of what's wrong with.
You might have something there. Although the thing is I loathe the term neurodivergent because it's fake. There are no structural differences between neurodivergents and normal people.
You know what I'm getting. You know what I'm getting at.
I know what you're talking about.
Okay,
those are personality flaws. Those are personality issues. Those defects.
Yeah.
Not. I mean, like when the neurodivergent people, their brains are the same, but neuro talks about the physical structure of the brain. So you're talking about people that have like brain defects or traumatic brain injuries, and those are real. But those are the diversions of the norm. There are other things that are in play. There are software problems, not hardware problems.
You hate the term. You hate the term, but basically he's saying that Sheldon Cooper used to be the editor. Well, you can't do this. Superman wouldn't do that, so go ahead and change it. And now Sheldon Cooper is the writer, and there's just some normal person doing the editing.
Although, to be honest, isn't Sheldon also like the entire fan base of any given thing?
Well, yes.
No. That entire show is what dumb people think smart people are.
Oh, like. Okay.
Oh, we don't have to get off on that.
So, but anyway, back to Annual. I agree.
Back to the Annual.
I agree with Hutch in a way that, like, again, we need comics need better editors to say, oh, that's a halfway decent idea. Here's where you're wrong, and here's how you're going to rewrite it. So this is the Jimmy Olsen and touring Supercore, and the vignette here includes one of the most hilarious twists on Parasite that I've seen in a minute. This is what I call Amazon worker Parasite, delivering packages. Where
I love the smiling image of his face.
Yes.
Smiling Parasite. Oh my gosh.
So this is definitely a question for the panel and the audience too. What was your take on Rudy becoming an Amazon worker?
Well, he's just a porter. That's not that big a deal. I think I actually okay, it depends on where the starting point for Rudy is, right? Because he's been written different ways at different times.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes Parasite is written as a decent guy who's got a problem, right?
Like a drug addict or something.
Like
addicted to hunger. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Sometimes he's written as like a thug who says, "Well, now I have the power to, no one's gonna push me around anymore."
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that's kind of thing is if he's written as a thug, this doesn't make sense. But Williamson clearly is writing him as a guy with like a problem, and they found the dude's discovered vaping and no longer has to smoke.
That's it.
He's got himself the Nick patches. He's not out in the cold anymore. He's trying to live his best life with his patches.
It's a vape pen.
and he's just like, I used to really feel addicted, and now I'm on this program. I'm on the steps. I'm working myself down. I'm going to the clinic. I've got myself set up with
this is Metal's I think favorite version of the character. Metal said he never really cared for Parasite, but he was intrigued by what Williamson did with him. So it looks like we still have some approval from that. This is not the first character that or villain, rogue, who gets this treatment in this annual. So Metal and I have the same opinion of what we get from Livewire later on.
This is rather like what Chuck Dixon did with Amygdala, where he had a patch that was taking care of. He would get injections, and he was able to be just a normal person, and they would let him out. He actually lived in Nightwing's building, and so that was. But then he ended up going wild because somebody sabotaged his patch. So this is different because he's like in prison and he still has to go back to prison. But yeah, I am curious as to what purpose he can serve aside from shipping boxes around. But it is nice to see some options for characters like him.
Well, the purpose is so that we can have a scene like this where he says, "Oh, can I keep him?"
Which is the weirdest.
But it is him. It's him. He should be absorbing the thing, which is kind of weird that he's not.
Isn't this like it's been long? Is the rationale like it's developed its own sentience because it's been separate from him for so long? Something like that. I don't know.
Well, I mean, and it may be that he can't absorb him as long as he's got his wristband on that monitors his energy intake. And I don't know.
And it has 4 arms and he has 2.
Well, it's a mutant.
It's a mutant. Yeah.
It's that weird Kryptonian mucking that they're doing with the. I only hope that, honestly, I only hope that somehow this plays in the future, and that
there's a good opportunity here because you can have your cake and eat it too, right? Because eventually you need to have Parasite be a villain that you can have in Superman's universe. You can't just get rid of that. This would allow you to have Rudy take some positive steps in his life, keep him on that track, and still have access to a monstrous Parasite character you could fight. Because you have this alternate part of him that can spin off and have 4 arms and be ugly and monstrous. So I'm that's fine with me. That doesn't bug me.
I figured that's the enemy for Crypto. That's now you've got a Parasite dog.
There you go.
To go up
I'm thinking most likely scenario is that the Parasite pet somehow ends up getting killed, and that sends him into a rage, and he goes back to being a villain.
There you go.
It could be that. I prefer the other option where you get to keep Rudy, and you get to have a Parasite become its own. It develops his own sentience, and he's monstrous. Maybe I'd be more okay with. Mm-hmm. I'd like that because then you don't have to undo all the character development.
I totally agree, but this is comics.
Yeah.
Hey.
What we're gonna do.
I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. Well, it's also just as likely that another art, because this happens all the time. Another writer comes along, doesn't read any of these, and just puts Parasite. It just reverts him and doesn't even address it. We see that all the time.
Yeah.
Next power outage, he goes. That's all you need. Power outage goes out, and he's like, no more energy. I hunger. It's back to being hungry, because he's basically like a spider. It's just nonstop, always hungry type character.
All right. So jumping to the next vignette, what do you guys think of Lois and Livewire?
I loved Lois getting fed up with Lombard, and like any excuse to leave, I'll take it.
Yeah.
And it's also kind of fun because it's one of those things where in previous issues, Lois is always like feeling like itchy at the office, and like getting the need to go out and like do a thing, and now she finds an excuse to go do a thing, and I thought it was a pretty cool interplay between them. I did not remember this Red whatever her name is.
Cloud.
Red Cloud.
I have no idea what her backstory is or why she hates Lois or what.
Yeah. Well, they explain a little bit that she was a plant that was sent to spy on the Daily Planet, and she ended up working with Lois for a little while before trying to like kill everybody because she's some sort of whatever.
Yeah.
Let me...
So yeah, that was the thing. I did like the idea that there was a couple things. I almost forgot. I have to go back and complain about something. When Mercy is giving the tour of Supercorps, and they said that they remodeled the LexCorp after Superman's values, truth and justice and all that stuff.
I knew it. They always do that.
Irritated me because they had just talked about Lex being an American success story, right?
Yeah.
So they weren't ashamed to call Lex an American success story, but to show any correlation between Lex and Superman in their love of America, you can't possibly do that, right? Even in this speech, which is specifically designed to tickle the ears of people that like Superman, they can't do it. So, it's just there is not a single PR person in history that would not be playing on that. It's just.
Man, you know what I just realized too is who was the one group of people. It was a Man of freaking Steel.
What?
It's at the end when he says, "What?"
You cut out there. I didn't hear you.
We cut out there. We didn't get.
I said the one time in recent history that someone did actually go that route. It was in Man of Steel, of all things. Because at the end, remember at the end he says, "I'm from Kansas. I'm as American as they come."
Yeah. Yeah, which bothered me that he would just volunteer that he was from Kansas. That limits the potential of people who it could be to a very small subset. But
technically he's from Cleveland. You want to get real old school with it?
Well, yeah, he was supposed to be upstate New York. Smallville was supposed to be upstate New York for a long time before John Byrne said Kansas. It's in Kansas. So
Golden Age, it was Cleveland for the first couple of issues. It was funny. It was
okay.
Yeah. It's straight up Cleveland. Siegel Schuster, Ohio.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they both live there. Anyway.
Yeah.
Moving on. So
I looked it up. Red Mist, appeared not too long ago as somebody from Star Labs, and there's a Star Labs accident, and this reporter gets powers, and it says she is the deadliest enemy of Superman.
Well, everybody's the deadliest enemy of Superman.
It's declared. It's issue Action Comics 1020. She was declared Superman's deadliest enemy
for all 5 seconds. I'm sure.
Yeah.
So this gal tries to kill Lois. And Lois unlocks Livewire so they can have a fight that I'm not even sure actually makes sense, because I don't know how you shock a person who's made out of gases.
Right.
Pretty sure
she's Superman's deadliest enemy.
With enough
and
current,
the electric lady goes zap, and she goes,
yeah.
I think
with
with enough current,
you turn a gas into a plasma.
With enough current, electricity you can zap a cloud.
I'm just saying, she should have dissipated. If they turn into a plasma, all these things would have separated.
Yeah.
Anyway, point being is Livewire saves Lois's life, and Lois gives her a column. So there you go.
Yes, I will say that
that's a cool shot.
That is a great shot
because it's an actual action shot in a Superman comic instead of talking.
Metal and I like this portrayal of Livewire.
Mm-hmm.
She's often portrayed as so obnoxious that it's hard to, she's obnoxious to the point you just get her off, get rid of her, so I don't have to see this obnoxious person.
Yeah.
And in this version that Williamson did,
nothing obnoxious about her shouting out like and subscribe, bitch.
No, she still is. What I'm saying is that Williamson makes her obnoxious and likable. I want to see more of her being obnoxious as opposed to get her off the screen or the page. I can't stand her at all. So that's a gift to make an obnoxious character where you go, I'd actually be okay seeing more of her. And while still making her obnoxious. So that's a nice little dance, and I think Williamson's nailing it.
And I think one of the things that they had too, I thought was really interesting, is that Red Cloud was insistent that Livewire was some sort of sellout because she's fighting the villain for the sake of having because of being interviewed, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, you're a reporter though. Your job is to write what people tell you for money. I don't understand where you get off on the moral high ground.
Well, doesn't Liveware basically just say, yeah, and?
Yeah,
exactly. Which is also kind of endearing because it's just like
she's really capturing that TikTok vibe. So,
but it's endearing. It's like, oh, you hypocrite. It's like, okay, hit like, comment, and subscribe. It's kind of lovable in its own way.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, it makes me laugh.
Or maybe I'm just too close to doing my own YouTube show. Have I ever told anyone to like a video? I don't know that I have.
So
I hope you like
it,
but
and subscribe.
I think I like this take on Liveware a little bit better than I like the take on Parasite, because the take on Livewire is she's still her. She's willing to do a little good, but she's still her. And I feel like with Parasite, it was like, no, I'm just a good guy now. And it's like, oh, come on, do we have to go that far already?
Well, and I mean, and the one of the elements too that really wasn't plumbed is why she mentioned she's got a grudge against the city, but the question is why, and that's what I don't know that we have had explained why she has a grudge against the city, and is that a thing where is finding her place, her position, her purpose, with her little opinion column, is that going to be enough for her to say, okay, maybe this is where I belong? I don't know. That'd be all things to consider. Anyway, on to the next one. Unless anybody else to say about the Livewire situation.
I mean, like, I think the way she ends it is interesting, because she says, I got beef with the city, but I'm going to take it out on... She's basically like, I'm going to use another potentially worse supervillain as an outlet for my pent-up villainous rage. And it's like, all right, like, I can buy that. Yeah, that works for me. It's like, I have problems. You're a convenient outlet, right. And I get to, and society will be okay with me if I take it out on you. And I'm like, that's an avenue. Like,
I like that. I like that Lois is harnessing her in the same way that Superman, the Supercorp, is harnessing the Parasite. It's like, okay, she has needs. If we can meet those, then maybe she can, do a column for the Daily Planet instead of going on rampages, and that's, in her own way, Lois is doing some good, and she's helping her company by taking advantage of somebody everybody knows and is interested in what the heck she has to say, at least for a while,
Yeah.
So yeah.
So I dig this. This is fine. I think this is one of the better, potentially the best, of the vignettes I guess we get.
Yeah. But keep going. Yeah, let's see what the next one is.
So after that, we get Superman, actually. And he's already kind of wrapped up the really cool fight, which again bummed me.
I realized something else I forgot to mention. When they were doing the Super Corps tour, they mentioned that one of the things that Super Corps is doing is using all of their advanced surveillance equipment. They are coordinating with emergency services to move people out of the buildings that are being crumbled in the giant robot fight.
Oh, finally!
Yeah,
right. And that's mentioned. So here, where this fellow with the red hair here is one of the Super Corps operators, and he's helping Superman track down the Toyman signal. And so we get this. So
I gotta point out, artistically, that middle tier on the far right. I mean,
that's just Christopher Reeves.
But I'm okay with that.
Okay. Yeah, the artwork suddenly changed here.
No, it did. But I'm okay with that. That's Christopher Reeve, who is also one of the best Superman we've ever had in that. So no, I'm good. That's cool. Good job.
Yeah. And again, as a Superman reader from way back, Toyman, I liked Toyman as John Byrne came up with him, and then they had him turn into some child-killing monster who dressed completely differently and killed Cat Grant's kid, which is talked about in a few pages later, and it's still just a terrible terrible turn on that character. It's like hard to use him in any other way.
When they make him
And
when they make him a pederast, essentially.
basically,
yeah.
And he like sleeps in a crib, and he's like, he had a mental breakdown where he's basically a child instead of being a guy who loves children and wants them to play with, with custom manufactured toys instead of mass produced stuff, which was his original motif. And then
did Frank Miller, because I know Frank Miller does that with Toyman in Dark Knight Returns. He goes the angle of, this guy likes toys, I'm going to make him into a creepy pedo. Was Frank Miller the one who originated that take?
Was that in Dark Knight Returns? I don't know what you're talking about. I don't remember.
Dark Knight Returns. Yeah, when Joker does his little thing, he goes to Toyman to make those toys, and it's pretty heavily implied that that's
Toyman. I don't remember that. Okay.
Pretty sure that's Toyman.
I didn't know that, but those floating dolls that release the gas and all that. I didn't know that was supposed to be Toyman, but
I think it is.
Yeah, and that's why they've tried to go with like a Japanese Toyman. They've tried to bring in the one from the cartoons, which is kind of what the giant robot is based on. And
I like that version. That version is pretty cool.
Yeah, there's no way to totally redeem him though. He killed a kid. It's like, it's just you almost need to. It's like, of all the things, he's the one that needs to be reset and his old continuity thrown away. They keep it. So yeah. Anyway, that's all. Go show him cowering in the next page, and yeah. Well, he's all tied up, and yeah. I like what they came up with, that the bad guys who used his technology gave it to kids, that the kids are operating the robot having no idea that they're just playing a video game in their minds, and they have no idea they're actually controlling the robot fighing Superman. And
can we talk about how...
I wish I saw more of that fight. Anyway, go ahead.
So Fizz says they did that retcon some time ago. So
retcon that he didn't kill a kid?
Or there was a malfunctioning robot that killed the kid.
Oh, but okay. But then her kid is still dead, which is still talked about.
It's it's a sad sign of our times that a character like the Toyman in our current era, it's hard not to see him through the lens of our warped times.
Yeah.
When back, years and years and years ago, some of these characters invented in the golden age, like Prankster, and it's like there was nothing. It's perfectly, I wouldn't say innocent, but the character is made in a much more reflecting a different time. And so having a goofy character with, I've got, a goofy kid theme, people weren't thinking, oh, that means that character has to have a creepy predilection to hurting children or something weird.
Right. Right. And that's the problem, is it's like, I really love, when you have an old adult who says, I really love children and I prefer to spend time with children. And it's like, instead of thinking Mr. Rogers, you're like, ugh.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. Yeah.
Like,
that's life in 2024, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Well, hooray. Kind of sad. But so here we have Toyman. He's coloring here. It just makes him look like just a regular dude, which is not great on selling the character, in my opinion. But the next vignette after that is Marilyn Monroe.
Okay, am I crazy, or did they not call her Carolyn in the first panel?
Yeah.
No, that's talking about Cat Grant.
No. Carolyn Moonlight. Scroll up.
No, it's
the weirdest thing.
Okay,
hold on. A typo, or if we've been saying it wrong all the time.
No, it's Marilyn. Which page are you talking about?
I think it was the very first page of this vignette.
They don't mention her in the first
page.
Oh,
no. It may have been the very first page of the whole thing.
You mean of the entire comic?
It's because it's when Lois is talking about all the crazy stuff happening in Metropolis.
Sorry,
I forgot.
I don't think they even mention her.
She's not mentioned on that.
No. But this is the part that I hate, where she sticks her head out the window and then she has the door open. And it's like, that doesn't work if you're in the back of a cop car.
All right, so I think the page Cartoonicus is mentioning is this page, and
Uh-huh.
it's Marilyn right there, Marilyn Moonlight.
I
Maybe
can't
it's
see a
just
thing from here.
my goodness.
I can't read it. Yeah, it's like, but
It's an M.
okay.
It might be the font might be but
That looks like a K to me.
it's an M. I got the issue in front of me.
Wow, I'm zoomed in. That is annoying.
Is that robot behind the robot? Is that robot the one from the cartoons that sent Superman into the future with the blast from his chest?
You might be right. That's a good episode too.
That
What
is
an
a great
episode. That's
Yeah,
a good episode. Gosh, it's one of the best.
yeah.
Vandal
Anyway,
Savage.
sorry.
All right, so here we got Marilyn Moonlight
Mhm.
as getting a little bit more attention. Out of all of the characters that Williamson has introduced to us, I think Marilyn Moonlight is the one I'm the least sold on, apart from her the coloring aesthetic,
Which is amazing. Yeah.
which is artistically this is, and I do want to bring this up.
The next page, really, when you see her hat and her hair braids and how bright they are and all that, it's just that's
So I want to bring up the fact that this is something that I think I think Marilyn Moonlight is a testament to what kind of character aesthetic we can get in. Not everything in modern comics is terrible.
Right.
Not everything is a step backwards. I think Marilyn Moonlight is one of those things where it's like the way they do the glow. I think this is something that modern comics can do that I think older comics would not have been able to do so well. And to sell as well. And so this is a modern character that I think may could only be created aesthetically in our current era. And so I like the fact that because we have these modern techniques in digital, rendering, we can do this type of aesthetic for this character. That's cool. She's got that going for her.
I'm just glad she actually did something for once.
Yeah. Although does she
Her
doesn't kill them.
use.
What does she do? Does she not shoot bullets to the or did she shoot to the right of
Well,
them?
she shoots light. They talk about that they had that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
She
One of
is
the things.
light. Yeah, she's a ghost. She kind of manifests like an old-timey cowboy, but her powers are light-based. So she's basically just energy blasting them, and I'm assuming knocking them out, or else they'd probably be arresting her for shooting those guys in the head.
Well, yeah, the windshield isn't even busted in the next scene. So yeah, she doesn't shoot out the windshield. She shoots through it with light. Okay.
So then she gets offered an interview because, hey, tell your side of the story because we're women, yo.
Yeah. And she knows who Cat Grant is without her saying, hey, I'm Cat Grant. She knows it. So
She
did
must
you
read the
notice that?
paper.
Maybe. And that's true too.
So so this is definitely the whole issue is mostly a fleshing out of our side characters for the bulk of it, until we get to the very end where do we want to mention the Perry White bit?
Yeah. Well,
yeah, I think so. I think that's an
Okay.
important thing to hit on.
All right. So we also hit the point with Perry White is running for mayor, but he is also hiding something. So there's some drama going on with Perry White and I believe Lex. So there's some connection between the two. Perry White is hiding something. Drum roll.
See, there's
We're gonna
something
find out
weird
what
you
that
just said. You said someone is running for a political office, but they're hiding something.
yeah.
All right, that's fair.
Yeah,
But-
I don't really know. I mean, is there? I noticed earlier when Ron was talking about how the mayor is going to get reelected, and he says unless somebody else appears, and it's like, well, Perry White is up. I mean, that's
That was
what he's
revealed after
doing.
the annual came out, though.
His running for mayor was after this.
Yeah.
But isn't that why Lois is filling in for him? Or
He was on an unspecified.
oh, okay. I forgot what issue that happened.
yeah.
I'm sorry. You're right.
I think it actually happened in 6. I think that was the next issue they announced that.
Okay, and then that cuts to here. So it was announced in the issue right before this one where he's running. Or no, this the first appearance of him running for mayor?
Yeah.
Okay, so that all right. Again, because I saw this out of order, and this is another one of those. Oh, it was answered in the annual. Okay, you got it. Okay,
Yeah, so he's
caught up. Sorry.
So we're putting so we're planting that seeds of him, hiding stuff, having some connections to things, which is that's a nice little angle for Perry White. We'll see how that pans out, but that's basically the seed gets planted here, and then we get to I think someone had asked what's going on with our last Zarnian Lobo, and it was like, well, it was in the annual. So Farm and Craft had been doing the science to Lobo. So there
was one super cringy moment in this little segment.
Yeah, I know what you're going to talk about.
Which one? Which one?
We'll get this here. So the Pharmagraft have developed some. They got Winslow shot to tell them some of his technological secrets, and one of those somehow includes a syringe that's strong enough to pierce Lobo's skin. Although I don't know why that makes any sort of sense.
How is that toy related?
Yeah, I don't understand how that would work at all, but sure. Okay, so they get Lobo's blood, and they're going to do some tests on Lobo's blood, and they say, oh my goodness, his DNA, it's so complex, it's self-replicating, which means that these guys don't know anything about DNA, because all DNA is self-replicating.
Right,
that's
but in this case,
how it works.
But Lobo can regrow from any drop of blood.
Right.
That was the deal.
That's another editing catch where it's
right.
Williamson's I get what Williamson's going for, but that piece of dialogue needed to get tweaked because DNA's whole job is to kind of
replicate.
Right. Yeah. Like that's just Williamson.
Lobo. Yes, Lobo does have a healing factor, but the way DNA works is it unzips, and part of it is used as a tool. It unzips and unfolds, and part of that DNA is used as a tool to create RNA strands, which is then used to create DNA for specific proteins. And that's how your entire body works. So it's constantly replicating and self-replicating itself. That's how normal healing works. With the Zarnian, with it would just work more efficiently. But that's all DNA works that way. So
that's right.
So
it's again that I give that I attribute that more to an editing error of you whipped up the first draft. You needed someone to just kind of walk in and say, hey man.
I'm just saying, if you're writing science fiction, you have to know a little bit about science.
Right. The in Legion, when he was in the Legion 89, Legion 90, and all that, the Kaluan, I forget what they called him, who's sort of Brainiac but not, had turned off his ability for his blood to self-replicate because it was just, any drop of blood would grow another Lobo. And then they had one issue where he was allowed to do that, but then he's found a way to disable it. You can disable it so that he doesn't do that all the time. But he does make a reference to having a daughter, which is something that they have in I've read that an issue of one of his daughter, a horrible character. But other than that, there's not supposed to be any other Zarnians. He's the last Zarnian. That was the name of his first his first miniseries, his first trade paperback.
But we find out something different.
Yeah. But not only are they all, is there a city full of Zarnians, but they're all Lobo. They're all wearing leather and violent, and that's not what Zarnians in general were. That's what Lobo is. So it's like they've transformed these people in that city to be replicas of Lobo. That's what somebody's been experimenting on them to get them to be as, but I hate that because I like Lobo being Lobo, not everybody being Lobo.
Right. Well, and
was it possible that's what they meant when they said it's self-replicating, that he's going to actually create clones?
No, because the situation here is that he thought he's this last Zarnian. Instead, Brainiac has a bottle city.
Yep. Right. which is a great solution. That's a great idea.
Yeah, that's a great idea, and I love the Bottle City idea. I also love the well. And then they had the idea that the other thing was that there is, in addition to his DNA being self-replicating, is that there's actually like a section of his code that's a tracking aspect, right? So there's a tracker that's built into all Zarnian DNA, and Brainiac comes out and says, "Ooh, they've discovered that we've been meddling," and that sounds kind of fun. I can dig on that, surely.
Mhm.
I think
But-
the only thing that, because you cringed at something different than I cringed at.
Okay.
I cringed at, I think, the last line of the entire annual.
Oh, that's bad.
Are you sorry? That's bad. Are you saying you agree with me?
No. I'm saying like
okay.
that's a bad place to leave. When
Okay,
the
yeah.
last thing you read is making you go,
Yeah, it's the last line. So I don't want to spoil it, but I don't want to spoil the page, but the last line shows Brainiac, and Brainiac basically says, "I won't be. I'm doing my evil plan, so I won't be alone in the universe." And I was like, "Oh, come on." I think it was just the way it was worded, just made him sound a little bit like a sap. And I'm like, and it doesn't. Even the angle doesn't bother me. It's again just the way it was phrased.
right.
I think because I feel like Williamson's getting really touchy-feely with everybody, and I'm like, I'm okay with certain characters exploring angles we haven't seen from them. I'm okay with exploring this side of Brainiac. I'm okay with it. Just the way it being worded, I won't be alone in the universe. I was like, come on, just gotta be a better way to say that line
Yeah.
that doesn't make him look kind of wah.
I don't know if it's a case of spoiler, but I did want to actually look at that page because surrounding Brainiac are two what look like Doomsday dogs. They're dogs with the bone structure of Doomsday.
I
So
saw
he's
that
got
too,
Doom dogs.
I'm just like, I don't know what's up with that. Now, one thing that Fizz says originally the Lobo's race was super nice, like Care Bears, and he killed the rest of his kind.
Mhm.
Are the writers not familiar with the backstory of Lobo? I wonder, and they actually in one of the other issues when the Zarnians show up, there are these badass, heavy metal Zarnians. So I wonder if one of the things, and showing the Doomsday dogs, I wonder if they're going to play with the idea that these other Lobos were snatched from Zarnia at a time before Zarnia had civilized itself. And in the same way that like it's in the pre-crisis, and I think maybe in the post-crisis too, there was in the ancient past of Krypton, there were warlike,
Right.
like Conan the Barbarian era that went on Krypton, and eventually people calmed down and got themselves under control.
Become enlightened. They got enlightened.
That's the word I'm looking for.
the
So I don't know if
tape
maybe
they go with,
that they're going to play the idea that there was that Zarnia had evolved to be a heavy metal society, and then finally people got hooked on Kenny G and chilled the hell out.
I would be okay with an alternate take of Brainiac realizing, hey, if I've got this, maybe if they were peaceable like little sheep, and he has them, but he realizes that, if I do some Brainiac science and conditioning to them, I can have an entire bottle city full of unstable, crazy warriors.
That's what I'm getting
down from Sabbath. Who knows what will happen.
And I'm okay with either of those.
Give these guys some Twisted Sister. Let's just see what happens.
Even when Lobo first appeared, he looked more like a David Bowie character than metal. So, yeah, you remember that first outfit he had that was just some purple tights or something like that. He looked like David Bowie more than some hard rock character.
The thing is, all of this assumes a comic book writer's ability to pay attention to canon.
Yeah.
Williamson's not doing a terrible job. I don't think
he's not. He's definitely playing with the canon, but I think he's doing it in a way that there's a lot of love behind it.
They had to have been experimented on, though, the Zarnians, because they weren't like this as a people. So I'm more up for, this Bottle City having been character conditioned or something based on I want to have a city full of Lobos, so I'll just
let me add by the way that I've always selling that idea is not hard in my mind, because the idea of, imagine you being in your town and an alien comes in, scoops it up, puts it on a shelf, and yet you continue to live and not. I would imagine that could lead to a ton of barbarism. If anyone's seen Solar Opposites, the Wall episodes where everyone just becomes everything becomes just Mad Max, and so like that, selling that idea to me is not hard. Like I have a bottle city of aliens, and I have a whole bunch of them. Oh look, how long is this one going to take before they start eating each other? So not a hard sell for me to imagine that happening.
Yeah.
All right.
And this could be like, this could be, since they replicate from their blood, it could be a case of, like survival of the craziest, that, most of them are nice, and and then they have a blood battle, and and the tough ones have like 20 of themselves or 50 of themselves or something. This whole city could be like the 10 worst people replicated over and over.
That's a compelling. That's a good idea. I like that.
Here's a side note on something that I want to. I've been bothered with. I hadn't stopped to think about it, but in this conversation, suddenly, I'm very bothered with this. So Lobo, who is the toughest bastich in the galaxy, right? He has one daughter, but they're like starfish. Yeah. So how is that even possible that he only has one child?
He had a whole bunch. There was an entire miniseries about him killing all his other children.
Okay.
So he just calls them.
He just went after all his bastards. It was something like the terrible bastards or something. I forget what it was called, but it was basically him going after all the children he's fought.
I will say Lobo is one of the series that some of the stuff I've read, it's not usually my cup of tea because of how it's like how violent and like gruesome it is. It's up there. The edgy, it's very, it reminds me kind of some of the Deadpool kind of stuff sometimes, where it's just like we're being edgy to be edgy. And
well, in fairness, Deadpool is like Lobo, I think is what you're.
Sure.
Yeah.
However you want to pull it.
Even boring.
Yeah.
Lobo came first.
I think Lobo. I think the stories I have appreciated with Lobo in them are when he is, like put in interaction. Like to bring up another cartoon example, there's that episode we were just talking about with Toyman sending Superman to this future. They all think Superman's dead, and Lobo shows up and says, "You know what? I'm going to replace Superman for y'all because I'm as tough as Superman." And he doesn't fit in with the Justice League at all. And the whole episode is just this really awkward thing. And the minute Superman shows up, they just like kick him to the curb. And like that was kind of fun because like Lobo shows up and he's like attempting to kind of turn over a new leaf is the best way that Lobo can. And he is a powerhouse. And so he does like, trash some, he kicks some butt.
And he was voiced by Brad Garrett. I love that.
Yeah.
But he does not fit. And so like, I think stories like that are just fine. When it's just him being edgy and let me murder a bunch of things.
Right. But he's one of those characters that if you find out that he's murdered like everyone at the North Pole and he's killed all his children, it's hard to just suddenly have him as a funny character in a story. Yeah. That's the problem with him. It's in the same way that you can't bring Toyman back as just a odd little guy after he's killed children. It's like, so Lobo's.
I did some reading on the Toyman thing.
Yeah,
that was they're mentioned in one story, but it was supposed to be it was confirmed in like the Superman Secret Files and Origins in 2009 that he had created a life-size doll of himself in case he ever got arrested. But the doll, like something went wrong in its programming and hated kids. And so the actual murder was done by the live model decoy of Shot.
As an acceptable explanation, I mean, it's stupid.
And so it wasn't so much that he wanted to murder kids. Yeah. It's just that his robot got all murdery of kids, and Shot was okay with kidnapping, but not murder.
Yeah.
So he's still kind of creepy, but he's not murdery creepy.
But all the stories after that where he's still that guy obviously have to be attributed to that doll, and I don't know. It's just if you're trying to fob it off so that you can have your character back, I'll accept it. It's because I so want the actual Toyman to be an okay character,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and this, that kind of comes back to something that we've talked about on the show here. As much as I've enjoyed some of the more serious Superman stories, I think that DC would have been very prudent to have kept Superman all ages always.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even after the crisis, they wanted to kind of do things a little more seriously. There's ways of telling serious stories that still don't necessarily cross those lines.
Yeah.
And I think that it would have been very prudent to have kept Superman as an all ages story, and not gone, PG-13 with it.
Yeah.
But the bell's been rung. So I think that's it. Oh, goodness sakes. We spent all of that time talking nonsense in the beginning, and we have talked about the annual, and it's already coming up on 11 o'clock for you guys on the East Coast.
It is.
Do you have quick notes for us to catch up on the couple things from Action that we need to know before we dive into House of Brainiac? Or do we have time for that, or do we need to segment a different moment for that?
I'll shut up. I'll shut up and he can talk.
Let me pull out my. So we might need to save it because there's a chunk that I feel like I think we might have to save it because I can do it pretty quickly, I think, and I can maybe do it at the beginning of when we start talking about that, because there's not the annual covered a chunk of at least the Brainiac stuff. What I would be talking about with Action Comics is just kind of like what's been happening, and I was also going to note some of the tone, and some of it was actually just going to connect to stuff we've already read. For example, how we got Lex in issue 1 of Dawn of DC Superman is a setup from Action Comics. So there's so some of the things that we've been seeing parallel, and some of it is just completely separate. So I wanted to set some of the groundwork for some of that, so that when we get into the crossover, I could foreground a little bit of that. That might make more sense when we dive into it anyway. So we'll probably save that for that point. I've not read the most recent issue. I need to catch up a couple. So I don't know how many of Superman's extended cast from Action Comics are going to show up in that crossover. Superman has adopted a couple of kids during the War World shenanigans. So the cast, Action Comics has got so many Supermen and Superwomen in it that it's actually kind of a problem.
So we're going to show up with a family tree?
Yeah. It's a problem that Williamson has solved by basically pretending like almost none of them exist or matter, which I love. So, but Action Comics has the whole famdamily in there at times, and it's kind of ridiculous. It's how many Kryptonians and Kryptonian adjacents can we cram into a single double-page spread to fight, Metallo?
Yeah.
Way to ratchet those stakes up. Let's save that.
Okay. So we will figure that schedule out. Anyway, I have stuff. Lobo is lame and boring. Bats says. Now, I'm not disagreeing with it, but I did want that his comment did string one thing to mind of this House of Brainiac story, is that Lobo is intentionally stupid, and this is a story where pairing Lobos, a whole city of Lobos, with Brainiac, who's supposed to be really smart, and I'm like, Funny. Okay. That's the last thing I wanted to say on that one. So
Good point.
we till next time. Actually, before we get on to saying goodbye, are there any updates people want to make on stuff? I know.
Yes.
Hutch had a comment, had an announcement to make.
I do. My channel, excuse me, You Lousy Kids, make sure you're subscribed to it and you watch it, because in the next few days, I don't know exactly when, I need to get a promo made and then I'm going to post it. But I finally got Warner Brothers to release the reaction video that I made to a Super Friends episode from 1973 that I did with Kevin Kubasik. We watched this episode. We talked about the implications of it. It's crazy. This episode from 1973 predicts what life is like in the 2020s amazingly accurately. And they hate it so much that they do the undo button on it so that they don't live that way. But you'll have to see it. Now that I've teased it, I'm going to be releasing it. I'll do one of those scheduled release things where everybody knows what time it's going to be. And hopefully Friday, Saturday, somewhere around there, I'm going to be putting it out there. This could go viral in a way, just if enough people watch it. And it is crazy. Not because of us and our comments, but it's like nobody talks about this episode. It's nuts. So you'll have to see it. But yeah, I actually had to fight. I mean, every time I upload, it says, no, it has Super Friends content. I'm like, I know, it's a reaction video. And I had to go through finally the appeals process where I have to write like a detailed description of why I think it's okay and send it off. And if they don't approve it, I get a copyright strike against my channel. But if they do approve it, they release it with no implications whatsoever. And it's like, why does it have to be so tense? Why does it have to be that? It's like, this is the first time a human being looks at it, because everything up till now is just a computer looking at it and going, I found content. No. It's like, I just want a real person to look at it.
And it's so weird that you can't like proactively, say, la da da da. This is gonna get hit. La da 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 da. This is the point. It's transformative. It's commentary. Blah blah.
Why couldn't I do that right from the start? Because I know that it has this. It's like, why can't I just send it off? But you have to wait for the rejection before you do the appeals, and it's weird. But I was so sure it would just get squelched. But no, to their credit, Warner Brothers said, fair enough, and let it go. So I just have to schedule it and release it. So I'm happy. Please watch my channel, You Lousy Kids. Thank you.
If I spelled it right, there is a link in the chat.
I believe that works, unless you have to put the @ symbol. I don't know. I'll check that.
I think you can, but with the link, I don't think you should have to.
Okay.
But you people out there in the internet, you can tell me if that works or not.
It didn't work. I just checked it.
Okay.
Hang on a second. I think. Let me see if I put the @ symbol in. Does it work? Yes, it does. You have to put the @ symbol in. Sorry.
So.
But yes, I'm what a great thing to find out today.
So, we over at Ideal Comics, a link in the chat in the description. We have good. Hopefully, if everything goes according to plan, should have a new Forces page up on Friday. Very excited for it. And also, we're still doing Grab It, the Rabbit Hero over on Global Comics, which has got like nearly 400 page views. And that, of course, is art and story by Taliesin Rhys, who may or may not be my kin. And that's the story there. But yeah, it's going pretty good guns. I'm pretty enjoying it. I tickle myself funny every time I letter a new one. So it's hilarious. But yeah, that's what I got going on. What about the rest of you all? Anything new?
More Super School's coming, and more Omega Girl is coming. There you go. I'm working on. I'm working on getting the final proofs or final edits reviewed, and so I can get proofs off. So
sweet. Very cool.
For issue 5, sorry, just to give numbers to it. Yeah.
Cool.
Very cool indeed. Okay, that's it, guys. That's a show. Tune around to the social medias to find out what our next show will be. Because I don't know for sure. We gotta. I've really fallen down on the ball. I used to have all the stuff mapped, coordinated. I'm barely hanging on, people. Okay, that's it for the show. We guys get out there and read some comics. And until next time, happy reading. Yep, that's the one. That's the closer. Bye.